Master Reddit, subscribe for more videos.
What industry is a lot shadier than it seems? Avocado farms. Most of the farms in Central America are taken over by the cartel because of how much money is in selling avocados. The textbook industry. Pearson is the ducking mafia. McGraw-Hill was the bane of my existence for years. Seriously? The funeral business preys on people's weakest moments to convince them to buy ridiculously unnecessary stuff. Ask a Mortician is a really good YouTube channel that tries to make the death industry more open and clear. Trucking. The margins are razor thin and so everyone is trying to nickel and dime each other constantly. The drivers lie to their dispatchers, the dispatchers lie to the brokers lie to the clients. All of this for like $50 to $100 sometimes. I worked in trucking and the head HR lady for our distribution center was skimming payroll, shorting the checks of the lowest people on the totem pole, then getting cash infusions to petty cash from corporate to return part of the theft as an emergency tide over until the employee's next check, then claiming the rest of the theft as an overage on the next payroll report. I am probably missing a step in her chain, but I am not an accountant. It was a scam she managed to work for a couple of years due to a lack of oversight during nationwide management shifts. When she finally got caught, rather than take the bad publicity, the company just let her leave. The last I heard, she was working in the same position in an adjacent industry, but still involving transportation. C'est la vie. Health insurance. In the commercials it is all about caring for your health and stuff. But if you ever get a serious illness, they will do anything to avoid paying for your treatment. Source: my mother got breast cancer and her health insurance made a business decision to let her die rather than pay the $40,000 for her treatment. They made that decision, then hired lawyers to make it happen. My mom got to fight them in court while going through chemo. She made it, by mortgaging the house. She told me the insurance company caused her more stress than the prospect of dying. I buy insulin every month, and every month I literally have to beg my insurance over the phone about why I need this. It's scummy shit. Edit: this really blew up. Cliché: thanks for my first silver and apparently platinum now too. This is dope lol. CBD, lot of predatory companies making subpar products with questionable raw materials and then marking it way the fuck up and selling it as a miracle cure to vulnerable and ill-educated consumers. Usually have a high-power legal team on deck, but pay their workers shit and no benefits. Edit: because so many people are asking, while I used to be in sales in the industry and have my own opinions about who's good out there, it's a woefully short list. You'll probably have your best luck checking out the top recommendations at r/CBD. They have a whole pin post about best companies that they've, hopefully, vetted well. Not an industry, but higher academia is badly broken. Some of the smartest people are some of the most badly exploited. Old tenured professors limit the number of faculty many departments can have, forcing people to work as postdocs forever, effectively doing all the work the professor should be doing in the first place. Meager pay and long hours, plus constant pressure makes postdocs some of the most depressed people. The grad students are no better either. A lot of the times grad students don't complain about ill treatment, harassment and outright bullying as they don't want to jeopardize their prospects of graduating. If you're a foreigner, this situation becomes even worse, whether you're a grad student or a postdoctoral researcher. It's a pyramid scheme. Way more new PhDs are granted each year than open faculty jobs. If anyone is reading this and is considering a PhD, you should choose a field that has a robust non-academic labor market. The odds of getting a faculty job are shrinking every year, and post-coronavirus it's only getting worse. Edit: stop telling me it's not a literal pyramid scheme. I know. I'm working in academia as a professor. All industries are shadier than they seem. I used to work for a flute manufacturer and it was shady as hell. I don't want to name the manufacturer, but it was around the 2008 financial crisis and the place was equity owned and leveraged to fucking Mars. The CEO was committing bank fraud and screwing contractors while laying off employees and enriching himself. Was there a whistleblower among the flutists? A lot of hobby fish importing is pretty shady. You have farms of certain types of fish like bettas in some areas of the world that are run with the fish in horrible conditions. Which is why a lot of the ones you get in a major chain store are sick before you even bring them home. The stores will blame the fish being stressed, but I've ordered and received hundreds of fish from small breeders/sellers and outside of Cory catfish that really enjoy committing suiciding by poisoning their own water. The fish arrive healthy and fine. Outside of boutique fish farming, the way some wild fish are caught is just horrible. The trappers will lightly poison the water supply to knock out the fish, then scoop them out of the water without a care for that area's ecosystem. This has led to depletion of some natural species to the point they are now endangered. Lastly, boutique fish sellers/major chains do not give half a rat's ass what happens to the fish in the end. This means that people who buy fish like plecos, bettas, goldfish, etc. end up getting sick of them and dumping them in local waterways to supposedly get rid of the problem. So in some areas, these fish have completely destroyed the local water ecology because, like other invasive land species, they were never meant to be there. One of the worst offenders is the lionfish in Florida. It's venomous and has no natural predators, so its population has exploded out of control. Basically, releasing fish into the wild is a terrible idea. Releasing any animal into the wild can have disastrous consequences, but fish are being released into a very limited ecosystem and outside of a few diseases. If they can adapt to the water and have no predators, they will survive and breed incredibly quickly. I love my fish, I love the hobby, and there's a lot of value to it, as global warming may make things like reef tanks a valuable source of coral in the future. But there's also a lot of bad to it. I hate seeing bettas for sale, suffering inside those little cups. Just because they can survive under extreme conditions doesn't mean they should be subjected to it. I like to compare it to being forced to live in your bedroom, but it's also your bathroom, and where you eat, but not able to clean it. Like, yeah, you can survive, but what kind of quality of life is that? Bettas need at least a few gallons of water, filter, heater, and more to thrive. I have a male betta in a 10-gallon with heater, filter, live plant sect. He really flourishes and has quite a personality for such a little fish. They are truly amazing if you give them space and what they need to be happy. Especially treats. It sucks especially because for some of those bettas, that's been their whole lives. I've also personally chosen to never buy a longfin betta again. I've owned a placket, and the difference in energy between my placket and my longfin bettas was very, very, very noticeable. I will care for my longfin boys until they pass, hopefully from old age, but if I ever get another betta, it will be another placket. Watching a placket swim around and hunt is a whole different experience than watching the long-finned ones struggle to get around with their longer tails. Plus, plackets don't mind stronger currents in tanks since they don't get swept around as much. I don't blame anyone else who continues getting long-finned bettas. They are absolutely gorgeous. But on a personal level, I can never do it again. But in general, I will never buy a betta from a chain store again. Only private breeders. The thought of them being born in tiny tanks, being shipped and then kept in cups until some of them die? No, I'd rather pay the extra $1 from a breeder. Some people will think that's silly, but fish are intelligent in their own way and seeing them suffer is hard. More people died last year over vanilla in Madagascar than cocaine in South America. They've even coined the term vanilla murder. Farmers hire armed mercenaries to guard their crops from thieves near harvest time, and if one is caught, well, let's just say it's in response to all the farmers that were killed by thieves for the same reason. This article is a fairly light read on the subject without anything too graphic. But there's a great deal of information about it floating around, along with some pretty disturbing accounts. I'm going to start using "that's vanilla" to mean extreme. When people tell me I'm misusing the phrase, I'll tell them about the vanilla murders. Vanilla, while being a common flavor in the Western world, is quite exotic in actuality. It is the fruit of a specific orchid, and most of the vanilla we get in the Western world come from Madagascar and its surrounding islands. It is hand-pollinated, and storms in the Atlantic Ocean have made their harvest difficult in the past several years. I understand that vanilla is the second most expensive spice to produce behind saffron. Edit, Indian Ocean, because I'm stupid and don't know geography. The maritime industry. Most of the big companies do things by the book and treat crews well because they're afraid of lawsuits and unions, but many smaller mom-and-pop companies break laws and violate safety regulations with reckless abandon because they're not as visible and can stay under the radar, so to speak. It's very common for a small company to ask a captain/crew to do something illegal and dangerous in order to increase profit, and for the captain/crew to comply out of fear of losing their jobs. And that's just the U.S. maritime industry. Sailors from poorer nations who work on ships are often fed little more than rice and cheap ramen for months at a time and paid pennies for their back-breaking work. I love running tugs for a living, but the industry as a whole is rife with shady business. I'd if it falls under maritime, but I took one look at the job listing for a cruise ship and now I tell all my coworkers to never take a job with one. I'm a stagehand and theater technician. I make decent money fresh out of college, $18 to $24 an hour depending on venue, even without joining the union, because I do specialized work. Looked into a lighting tech spot on a cruise ship, and I'd be getting minimum wage working 50 hours and 7 days a week. Wi-Fi on board costs money out of my paycheck, I'd be in charge of passenger safety off hours if an alarm goes off and we have to get people onto rescue rafts. I'd have a roommate in a small bunk, and all my wages would go directly into a ship debit card so I could give my income straight back to the company to eat. Something about living and working on a boat in the middle of the ocean seems to make employers think they don't have to actually care for their employees. I can imagine working on a boat that isn't filled with people on vacation would be even worse. FYI, life on a US flagged container ship is actually pretty sweet. Sailors get spacious, private accommodations, free Wi-Fi, 3 full meals a day of varying quality, and a strictly enforced work-hour cycle to prevent exhaustion. Dietary supplements. It's gotten better, but there's still a lot of half-truths and whole lies. Not all that long ago it was seriously like the wild wild west. As a chef/owner, I would say delivery services like Grubhub. They take 30% of the sale, leaving the restaurant with basically $0 in profit. And their customer support is a joke. It's like they hate us. Duck them. Never again. Yelp has been teaming with Grubhub to only list restaurants' Grubhub contact numbers, not their direct line, so they have to pay Grubhub for the order even though you called it in. Everyone to just stop using Yelp completely. They are a fucking shit company. It looks like they changed it, but my favorite Yelp bullshit used to be that their web app had 2 different filters for if a restaurant offered takeout, one prominently placed one that said takeout, and another buried in the other filter categories labeled takeout. The former would only show restaurants that offered takeout ordering through Yelp, meaning they get a cut. A friend of mine opened a pizza joint last year, and it became enormously successful as soon as he opened the doors, highly unusual for a restaurant, but he leveraged his success with an apparel line he also owns. He is passionately against Grubhub and the related apps. They've apparently tried to add his restaurant multiple times, and has had to be very forceful in getting his business removed. After hearing him describe what he's been through with them, I'll never order though Grubhub. Domain names. There's so much shady stuff that goes on when it comes to domain names: cyber squatting, sketchy registrars, domain hijacking, scams, predatory pricing, etc. Then there's the whole ican/.org fiasco that's been in the news recently. Worked at a domain registrar, can confirm. Domain squatting is a thing, and so is customers trying to blame you if they make a dumb third-party decision. Here's an example. The registrar I worked at had a rather unique domain name that they sold at a rather interesting time. I can't say what it was, but let's just say it had to do with a certain European country leaving a certain union, and the domain was a DLD with just that word in it. The day after everything went down, the former owner contacted us, passed account security, provided ID, and told us to change the owner details to another person. He was all smug about how he made thousands off of this sale. Calls back half an hour later, and what happened? The new owner stiffed him. Didn't pay a penny. But because the guy had called, gone through security, changed the owner details on the domain, and pushed the button to transfer the domain to this other person at another registrar, it was out of our hands and with the registry. The deed was done, and this new person got a nice new domain with a very hard to get hold of name for nothing. For the record, I'm part of that country and staunchly against what's happened, so being the person who authorized the details change and set the transfer in motion was a moment of malicious compliance I'll remember forever. Pet industry. Basement puppy mills and dogs that are so inbred they can hardly breath. There are plenty of ethical breeders out there, and some unlicensed breeders are ethical even if in a legal gray zone. But the conditions of some of the so-called puppy mills can be really bad. Sometimes when breeds are mixed and the pup gets the recessive genes the breeders weren't looking for, they straight up euthanize it because they know it won't sell. Not to mention how many purebreds are actually not pure at all, and sold as is. Shady. Not just dogs, tortoises at pet stores. Just find a responsible captive breeder and do not get one from a pet store. Also, macaws are another example. Bearded dragons should be okay, but that's probably the only reptile I'd buy from a pet store. Jewelry/gems/diamonds is pretty dark. Advertising. We don't really give a duck if it works, we already got your money. Even better, it's practically impossible to say it didn't work. Your sales stayed flat? Just think how much they would have dropped if you didn't run that ad campaign. Sunglass industry. Punny business, but, yes, it's true. I'll use Oakley as an example because it's, literally, close to home. Oakley has not been the same since they were bought out. Oakley was a great company to work for with great bonuses, swag, and extremely high company morale. Their HQ is one of the coolest buildings you could find, and the people were always happy to work for a legendary company that really treated their employees right. Oakley knew their customers well, but at the end of the day, it's still a business. And Luxottica wanted that business. Luxottica bought them out in the end, but not through Oakley's own will. You see, Luxottica owns nearly all the major glasses brands and the stores that carry them. They are one step short of a full monopoly of the entire global eyewear industry. Luxottica wanted Oakley, so they took Oakley off all the shelves of every major glasses retailer until Oakley could do nothing but give in. Squeezed dry until they had to be bought at nicer price for Luxottica. This will probably get buried, but glitter. A manager of one of the biggest glitter manufacturers, Glitterx, said in a 2018 interview that most of the glitter they make goes to one buyer for a single industrial use. When asked who the buyer was and why they need so much glitter, she said, "Oh, I definitely can't disclose that." When asked why, she said because they don't want anybody to know it's glitter. Ever since this interview, people have been trying to guess what company or industry secretly uses most of the world's glitter and why they want to keep that use under wraps. The non-profit world, unfortunately. Most people at the top are in it to make a name for themselves and don't usually care about the mission of the organization. Hear me out, K-pop. All the idol industry is shady. I've seen some interviews on retired idols and they have a lot to say about how the industry works. One of them even mentioned that they would split the profits 70-30, but when it came to pay, they divide the expenses 50-50. And if the group didn't make enough money, the idols would be in debt with the producers. Many times, idols would come out much poorer than when they entered. Yeah, I've heard a rumor that companies make a bunch of groups and train them mercilessly for years and they have to keep to their very strict contract, which includes not getting any SOs and restrictive diets. Also, when training for tours, they'd get 8-pound sandbags strapped to their feet so they'd look better performing. Quite sad, honestly. All of it makes for a high suicide rate amongst them. You just pointed out the nice part of K-pop. The dark part includes prostitution rings, pedophilia and more. And I say this as a K-pop fan. Mattress industry. Specifically, mattress firm. Worked in the mattress industry for a bit at a startup. Basically 90% bullshit. And the worst part? We had a real doctor serve an advisory role for our products. He debunked a lot of nonsense claims about mattresses like your pillow is 50% of your spinal support that the salespeople used to sell you accessories. The salespeople would argue with him, like they knew better. Kool-Aid is strong there. Some of my favorites I learned are, these hip direct-to-door in a box foam bed companies like Tuft and Needle use the same material, from the same manufacturer. There's hundreds of them, just put them in different boxes and sell at wildly different prices. Side sleeper, back sleeper and stomach sleeper is baloney. You toss and turn at night on purpose, to help prevent blood clots. No mattress will keep you from tossing and turning for the reason above. It's a natural thing you're supposed to do. More layers doesn't mean better mattress. A lot of companies add in cheap materials like upholstery foam to just claim there's more layers. Maybe one layer of nice springs, then just 10 layers of various types of cheap foam to get the layers higher. One that actually is true is heat. If you frequently are hot at night, foam mattress is not good for you. It's an insulator and will trap your heat on your body. In general, air and spring are better beds because of heat. Your body needs to dump temperature at night to get into a full, deep sleep. If it's too hot, you won't sleep well. Recruitment industry. Some examples. Fake jobs to lure candidates for registration KPIs. Trainee negotiation tactics of telling a candidate there is a better candidate who wants less, so we recommend less for you to get the job. Especially for contractors. Coveting off pitching and telling a candidate they have been sent to a line manager but in reality they haven't been submitted because 2 others from same recruiter have already been in interviews. If they fail, you may get a chance. Lot of coded ways to put on a database info on your age, non-professional related appearance, and ethnicity. Ageism, sexism, racism is rampant in hiring. A lot more dodgy stuff behind the scenes. Source: was involved with the industry on a global level for over 15 years before I changed careers. The music and the art industry. I'm saying that the people who did this to both me and Corey Haim are still working, they're still out there, and there's some of the most richest, most powerful people in this business. And they do not want me saying what I'm saying right now, Feldman said. Are you saying that they're pedophiles? Walters asked. F. Yes. W. And they're still in this business? F. Yes. W. You're damaging an entire industry. F. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying it's a very important, serious topic. The View, 2013, Hollywood pedophilia interview between Barbara Walters and Corey Feldman. Eyeglasses. You have no idea the snow job they put most people through when it comes to buying them. It's far, far worse than trying to buy a new car from a dealership. Wholesale frames are about $5 to $20, wholesale lens blanks are another $10. Any kind of dip coating, UV, tinting, etc., is negligible cost and effort to apply, literally pennies. To top it off, they don't even do a whole lot in-house, but send it to labs which are basically sweatshops that can take up to 2 to 3 weeks when labor time is literally under 5 minutes. Instead of training real opticians and technicians, they're just glorified sales staff now. Most of the time they don't even bother with proper measurement for PD, frame width, or arm fitting. Was an optician in the early 90s. I'm horrified at what the business has become. Defense contract manufacturing. When I worked in that field it was like a time capsule to 70s stereotypes. Beer for lunch, whiskey in the desk drawer, everyone fucking everyone, and the best seats at the biggest games for decision makers. Recycling. Dirty little secret of the recycling industry is how much is either shipped overseas and dumped in a landfill or just sent directly to your local landfill. The good news is the toxic stuff is what is sent overseas. Well, good news if you're not in a poor country, I guess. Nestlé. They use child labor, steal the freshwater reserves from small villages in South Africa, promising to give them better access to it, then privatize it and attempt to sell it back to them as bottled water at a price they can't afford. Not to mention I believe they used some water sources rural villages needed for drinking water and used it to pump their wastewater into. Then hide behind their lawyers to let them get away. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and comment below letting me know. It helps the channel and lets me create more content just like this. If you do like this type of content, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload.